the quiet reflection of Willow Creek. The last slivers of apricot light were bleeding across the western sky as Elias began his ritualistic walk. It was a habit cultivated over years, a gentle unwinding of the day's tangles before the deep embrace of night. His cottage, small and weathered, sat nestled just at the edge of Willow Creek, a village so named for the ancient, weeping trees that lined the winding river, their branches trailing like green lace into the slow-moving water. Elias knew every creak of the old wooden bridge, every twist of the pebbled path, every scent that rose from the damp earth as dusk settled. Tonight, the air was particularly soft, a cool caress against his skin after a day spent tending his small garden. The scent of freshly turned soil mingled with the faint, sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine from Mrs. Gable's porch, a scent he associated intrinsically with tranquility. A single robin late to its roost let out a final, questioning chirp from the branches of a nascent oak, and then silence descended, thick and velvet. Elias adjusted the worn, leather satchel slung over his shoulder. It contained nothing urgent, only a freshly sharpened pencil, a small notebook, and a smooth river stone he'd found that morning, its surface cool and comforting against his palm. These walks were less about destination and more about dissolution, allowing the self to dissolve into the encompassing peace of the evening. He often found that the quiet rhythm of his footsteps on the path was a melody that coaxed thoughts from their hiding places, not demanding answers, but simply allowing them to unfurl. He passed the old mill, its great wooden wheel stationary and silent, a dark silhouette against the dying light. The creek, usually a playful gurgle during the day, was now a hushed murmur, a whispered secret carried on the faint breeze. Elias paused at the water's edge, bending to dip his fingers into the cool flow. The water was surprisingly warm, retaining the sun's lingering heat. He watched as a single, iridescent dragonfly skimmed the surface, its wings catching the last faint glow before darting into the deepening shadows. "Going for your evening ponder, Elias?" A voice, gentle and familiar, drifted from the small, brightly lit window of the mill house. Old Silas, the miller, a man whose wrinkles told stories of 1,000 harvests, was visible, polishing a wooden bowl by the warm glow of an oil lamp. Elias smiled, a small, genuine curve of his lips. "Just so, Silas, the air calls tonight." Silas chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "It does, doesn't it? Tell the moon I said hello." "I will," Elias replied, a warmth spreading through him. These simple exchanges, these threads of connection, were as much a part of the evening ritual as the path itself. They grounded him, reminding him of the quiet interconnectedness of his life within Willow Creek. He continued on, leaving the warm glow of Silas's lamp behind, stepping deeper into the muted blues and grays of twilight. The stars, still hesitant, were beginning to prickle through the darkening canvas of the sky, each a tiny, distant promise. Section 2. The Whispering Willows and the Language of Leaves. The path curved, leading Elias away from the village houses and deeper into the hushed embrace of the willow grove. Here, the trees were ancient, their gnarled trunks thick with moss, their long, trailing branches forming natural arbors that brushed the ground. The air beneath them was cooler, infused with the scent of damp bark and the faint, sweet aroma of decaying leaves. This was Elias's favorite part of the walk, a place where the world seemed to hold its breath. He found his usual spot, A flat, smooth stone nestled amongst the roots of the oldest willow, its trunk so wide it felt like leaning against a gentle, slumbering giant. He sat down, the coolness of the stone seeping through his trousers, grounding him. Above, the willow branches formed a natural dome, their slender leaves rustling with an almost imperceptible whisper. It was the sound of secrets exchanged, of ancient stories murmuring on the wind. Elias took out his notebook and pencil, but didn't open them. Not yet. He simply held the river stone he'd found that morning, tracing its smooth contours with his thumb. It was a simple stone, gray and unassuming, yet in its cool weight, he felt the quiet permanence of the earth, the slow dance of geological time. He often thought of how many sunsets this stone had witnessed, how many seasons had passed over its silent surface. His gaze drifted to the creek, its surface now a dark mirror reflecting the nascent stars. The willows dipped their fingers into the water, their reflections stretching long and distorted, like shadowy dancers. He found a peculiar comfort in their posture of perpetual sorrow, their gentle weeping into the river. It was not a sad weeping, he mused, but a release, a letting go. They knew how to surrender to the flow, to bend without breaking. He recalled a conversation with young Clara, the village's budding artist, who had once tried to explain to him how the light fell differently through the willow leaves than through any other tree. "It's softer, Elias," she had said, her eyes wide with earnest observation. Like the light is afraid to wake someone who's sleeping, he understood what she meant. The light here was diffused, gentle, a caress rather than a declaration. A lone firefly blinked into existence near the water's edge, a tiny spark of emerald in the deepening gloom. Then another and another, until the air above the creek began to shimmer with their ephemeral dances. Elias watched, mesmerized. Each flash was a tiny beacon, a fleeting moment of brilliance against the vast backdrop of darkness. They reminded him of thoughts. He mused, appearing, shining briefly, and then fading back into the unknown. He thought of the day's trivial worries, the small annoyances that had clung to him earlier. The stubborn weed in the rose patch, the slightly chipped teacup, the forgotten errand. Here, under the whispering willows, they seemed to diminish, shrinking into insignificance against the backdrop of the vast, quiet night. The willows seemed to absorb them, to transmute them into part of their silent, continuous sigh. He finally opened his notebook. He didn't write a story or a poem. He simply drew a small, intricate sketch of a single willow leaf, capturing its delicate veins, its slightly serrated edge. It was an act of focused observation, a way of anchoring himself to the present moment, to the simple, enduring beauty around him. The rustling of the leaves above him seemed to grow slightly louder, a gentle applause, or perhaps a knowing chuckle. As Elias continued his silent vigil under the willows, the moon, a sliver of polished silver, began its slow, majestic ascent above the eastern hills. Its light, cool and ethereal, filtered through the willow branches, painting the glade in shades of shimmering silver and deep indigo. The fireflies seemed to dance more intensely under its gaze, their green lights like scattered emeralds on a velvet cloak. He heard a soft rustle in the undergrowth nearby. Not a sudden, startling sound, but a gentle movement, almost apologetic. Elias turned his head slowly. From behind a thick cluster of ferns emerged a doe, her coat dappled with moonlight, her large, dark eyes reflecting the glade's soft glow. She moved with an innate grace, her delicate hooves barely disturbing the fallen leaves. She paused, sensing his presence, her ears swiveling, her nose twitching, testing the air. Elias remained perfectly still, not wanting to disturb her. He simply watched, his breath held in a quiet reverence. There was a profound beauty in this shared moment of stillness. Two beings existing in quiet harmony within the heart of the moonlit woods. The doe lowered her head, nibbling delicately at some tender shoots near the creek bank. She seemed unafraid, unconcerned, as if Elias were just another part of the natural landscape, a silent statue amongst the ancient trees. Elias felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, deeper than any he had experienced that evening. It was the peace of acceptance, of being completely present, completely part of something larger than himself. He thought of how often, in the clamor of daily life, he missed these quiet miracles. The fleeting glance of a deer, the silent dance of fireflies, the subtle shift of moonlight on water. These moments were not loud, not demanding of attention, but they were rich, deeply nourishing. They were the true sustenance of a reflective soul. He recalled a passage from an old philosopher's text he had read in his youth. The greatest truths are often found in the quietest spaces. He understood that more profoundly now than ever before. The answers he sought, the clarity he sometimes yearned for, rarely came from frantic searching or intellectual wrestling. They came, instead, from allowing the mind to quiet, to open, to receive. The doe finished her grazing and slowly raised her head, her gaze meeting Elias's once more. There was no fear in her eyes, only a deep, ancient knowing. She seemed to acknowledge his presence, not as an intrusion, but as a silent witness. Then, with a graceful turn, she melted back into the shadows, leaving behind only the soft rustle of leaves and a lingering sense of magic. Elias closed his notebook, the small sketch of the willow leaf feeling complete. He placed the river stone back in his satchel. The moon was higher now, its light painting the glade in even deeper, richer tones of silver and blue. The air had grown cooler, carrying the damp scent of night. He felt a gentle drowsiness begin to settle over him, a pleasant heaviness in his limbs. He leaned his head back against the ancient willow's trunk. The rustling of the leaves above him seemed to transform into a lullaby, a soft, murmuring chorus. He thought of the quiet strength of the trees, the gentle flow of the creek, the silent wisdom of the moonlight. All of it spoke of enduring cycles, of rest and renewal. He felt his own mind begin to slow, the edges of his thoughts blurring, softening. The world outside the willow grove seemed to recede, leaving him cocooned in a bubble of peace. The rhythmic murmur of Willow Creek grew more distinct as Elias settled deeper into the embrace of the ancient tree. It was a gentle, consistent sound, a soft whisper that seemed to speak of continuous motion, of water flowing steadily towards the sea, carrying with it all that had passed. He found himself listening to it as one might listen to a quiet conversation, not needing to understand every word, but simply letting the cadence wash over him. He imagined the water's journey, from the distant unseen springs high in the hills, trickling over smooth stones, gathering momentum, joining other small streams, becoming the Willow Creek he knew. He pictured it winding through meadows, past ancient forests, under bridges, reflecting countless skies, sunny and stormy, starlit and clouded. And then, finally, its merge with the larger river, and eventually, the vast, boundless ocean. A journey of small beginnings leading to an immense unity. He thought of his own life in a similar way, the small choices, the daily rhythms, the quiet connections. Each step, each interaction, each moment of reflection adding to the larger flow of his existence. He wasn't a raging torrent, he mused, nor a crashing wave. He was more like the creek itself, steady, persistent, finding his way through the landscape, carving his own gentle path. The feeling of gratitude began to unfurl within him, a warm, spreading sensation in his chest. Gratitude for the simple things, the comfort of his cottage, the bounty of his garden, the familiar faces of his neighbors, the enduring beauty of the natural world around him. He realized how easy it was, in the haste of daily living, to overlook these quiet blessings, to take them for granted. But here, in the stillness of the willow grove, they shone with a profound radiance. He thought of Mrs. Gable's jasmine, its fragrance drifting on the night air. How something so delicate could produce such a strong, evocative scent. He thought of old Silas, his face etched with kindness, his dedication to the slow, steady work of the mill. He thought of young Clara, her eyes alight with the joy of seeing the world anew, finding beauty in the way light fell through leaves. Each person, each small detail, a unique thread in the tapestry of Willow Creek. A faint, cool breeze stirred the leaves above him, making the willows sigh a little louder. It was a comforting sound, like a gentle hand stroking his brow. His eyelids felt heavy, a pleasant weight pressing them closed. He didn't fight the drowsiness. He let it come, embracing it like a soft blanket. The sounds of the night began to merge and soften. The creek's murmur became a continuous drone, the distant hoot of an owl, a mellow, resonant note, the rustling of leaves, a whispered rhythm. His thoughts, once clear and distinct, now began to blur, their edges softening like watercolors dissolving into each other. He was no longer actively thinking, but rather experiencing thought as a gentle current, drifting, swirling, dissolving. He felt the ancient tree at his back, its immense presence a silent anchor. He imagined its roots reaching deep into the earth, drawing sustenance, connecting it to the very heart of the world. And he, leaning against it, felt a part of that connection, a small, humble extension of its enduring strength. The coolness of the evening, the gentle murmuring of the creek, the faint scent of jasmine, all contributed to a profound sense of ease. He was not alone, not isolated, but interwoven into the quiet, breathing life of the grove. The transition from wakefulness to sleep was not a sudden plunge for Elias, but a gradual, gentle descent, like a feather drifting slowly to the earth. The sounds of the night, which had been distinct, now merged into a single encompassing hum. The creek, the wind, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, all harmonizing into a quiet symphony. His awareness softened, becoming less focused and more expansive, like a ripple spreading across a still pond. Images, unbidden and fleeting, began to surface behind his closed eyelids. Not sharp, detailed visions, but hazy impressions, like memories seen through a mist. The shimmering scales of the dragonfly, the smooth, cool surface of the river stone, the kindly wrinkles around Silas's eyes. Each impression was brief, ethereal, dissolving as soon as it appeared, making way for the next. There was no need to hold on to them, no desire to analyze. They were simply there, floating on the surface of his burgeoning sleep. He felt his body relax, the last lingering tension draining from his muscles. His breathing deepened, becoming slow and even. The cool air seemed to wrap around him, a comforting embrace. He imagined himself as part of the grove, a silent, dreaming entity nestled amongst the ancient trees, his breath joining the gentle exhalation of the earth. A faint warmth spread through him, a warmth that seemed to come not from external heat, but from within, from a deep place of contentment and peace. It was the warmth of being at rest, of being safe, of being exactly where he needed to be. He thought of the quiet joy of discovery he sometimes felt in his garden, the sudden appearance of a new bloom, the taste of a perfectly ripe berry. This warmth was similar, but on a grander scale, a quiet delight in the simple act of existing. His consciousness felt like it was expanding, reaching out, not to grasp, but to simply touch the edges of the night. He felt the vastness of the sky above, the countless stars, each a distant sun. He felt the deep, silent wisdom of the earth beneath him, its slow, steady pulse. He was a tiny part of this immense, interconnected web, and in that understanding, there was a profound sense of belonging, of being exactly where he was meant to be. The concept of time began to dissolve. Minutes, hours, even days, lost their meaning. There was only the continuous flow of the present moment, a timeless expanse of quiet. The moon, he knew, continued its silent arc across the sky, casting its silver light upon the sleeping world. The creek flowed on, its soft lullaby, a constant companion. The willows whispered their ancient secrets to the breeze. And Elias, nestled amongst them, felt himself dissolving into the quiet hum of existence. His thoughts became less like distinct words and more like abstract colors, flowing and blending. Blues of twilight, greens of lush foliage, silvers of moonlight, all swirling in a gentle, tranquil dance. He was not dreaming yet, not in the vivid narrative sense, but rather resting in the liminal space between worlds, where the conscious mind began to release its hold and the deeper self prepared for its nightly journey. The heavy weight of his eyelids became absolute. He could no longer discern individual sounds, only the harmonious symphony of the night. The coolness of the air, the soft earth beneath him, the protective branches above, all merged into a single sensation of profound comfort and safety. He was held, cradled by the quiet world. He felt a smile, faint and content, touch his lips. It was the smile of someone who had found their peace, who had surrendered to the gentle pull of rest. The last vestiges of wakefulness dissolved, like morning mist burned away by the rising sun. He drifted, weightless and serene, into the deep, quiet waters of sleep, carried by the enduring lullaby of Willow Creek. The story does not end here. The first hint of dawn was not a burst of light, but a subtle lightening of the sky, a thinning of the deep indigo to a soft, bruised purple. Elias stirred, a gentle awareness seeping back into him. He was still curled at the base of the ancient willow, the stone's coolness a distant memory beneath the returning warmth of his own body. The sounds of the night, which had lulled him to sleep, were slowly giving way to the stirrings of a new day, the first tentative chirps of waking birds, the distant crow of a rooster from a farm on the outskirts of Willow Creek, and the renewed, slightly more energetic murmur of the creek. He stretched, his muscles stiff but pleasantly so, a testament to the depth of his rest. The air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of dew-kissed grass and the faint, earthy aroma of the willow bark he had leaned against. A sense of profound peace lingered, a residue of the deep tranquility he had found in the moonlit grove. It wasn't merely the peace of physical rest, but a quiet settling of his inner landscape, a harmonious alignment of mind and spirit. Yet, a singular, elusive thread of thought persisted at the edges of his awakening consciousness, like the fading echo of a dream. It wasn't a narrative dream, no vivid images or spoken words, but a sensation, a feeling of gentle, rhythmic movement, intertwined with a silent, resonating hum. It was elusive, just beyond his grasp, yet profoundly significant. He felt as if he had almost understood something vital, something elemental, during his sleep, and now, in the light of day, it slipped away like mist. He sighed, a soft, contented sound, and slowly pushed himself upright. The willows around him, now illuminated by the paling sky, seemed to hold a quiet knowledge, their countless leaves sparkling with tiny droplets of dew like a million scattered diamonds. He ran a hand over the rough bark of the ancient tree, feeling its enduring strength. "Thank you," he murmured, a habitual gesture of gratitude he often extended to the silent guardians of the grove. As he began his walk back towards the cottage, the sun's first golden rays began to filter through the canopy, painting the path in shifting patterns of light and shadow. The mist that had hung over the creek during the night was slowly lifting, revealing the glint of water and the lush green of the banks. Lumi, he noted with a soft smile, was a morning chorus of chirps, flitting between the branches, his iridescent feathers catching the burgeoning light. The little glimmerwing had remained perched on his shoulder through the night, a warm, feathery presence, and now seemed invigorated by the new day. Reaching the edge of the grove, he paused, looking back at the tranquil scene. The feeling of the elusive thought persisted, a gentle thrumming beneath the surface of his awareness. It wasn't a problem to solve, not a question demanding an answer, but more like a seed planted in the fertile ground of his sleep, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. He knew, with an intuitive certainty, that it would reveal itself in its own time. For now, the warmth of the rising sun on his face, the cool morning air, and the comforting sense of home beckoning him onward were enough. Back in the familiar confines of his cottage, Elias moved through his morning routine with a deliberate slowness. The scent of brewing herbal tea filled the small kitchen, mingling with the earthy aroma of the potting soil he had prepared the day before. He lit the small stove, the soft hiss of the flame a comforting sound, and watched the steam curl from his teacup. The sun, now higher, cast long golden stripes across the wooden floor. He tried to carry the profound peace of the willow grove into his day. He watered his indoor herbs, ran a cloth over the smooth surface of his wooden table, and sharpened his gardening shears with a rhythmic rasping sound. Each task was performed with a mindfulness he often sought, but rarely achieved with such ease. Yet, beneath this external calm, the elusive thread from his morning awakening continued to tug at his awareness. It was a subtle sense of incompleteness, like a melody heard once and almost remembered, but never quite grasped. The thought wasn't intrusive or unsettling in a negative way. It was more like a persistent hum, a gentle invitation to deeper contemplation. He found himself pausing, staring out the window at the dew-kissed garden, his gaze unfocused, his mind tracing the invisible contours of this unnamed understanding. What was it about the night that had felt so profoundly meaningful, beyond the simple act of rest? What was that rhythmic movement and silent hum that lingered? Later, as he worked in his garden, meticulously pruning a rose bush, a small unexpected event occurred. A monarch butterfly, its wings a vibrant tapestry of orange and black, fluttered erratically near his hand. It wasn't its presence that was unusual. Butterflies were common in his garden, but its agitated flight. It seemed to be searching for something, bumping gently against the rose leaves, then rising, circling, and descending again, as if lost. "What is it, little one?" Elias murmured, extending a finger. The butterfly landed briefly on his fingertip, its delicate legs tickling his skin, its antennae twitching. He noticed a faint, almost invisible shimmer on its wing, a subtle distortion that seemed to pulse. It was the slightest thing, barely perceptible, but it caught his attention. He remembered Lyra's words about unseen threads and subtle currents. The butterfly then lifted off, not flying away but hovering near a patch of newly sprouted wildflowers that Elias had planted just last week. These flowers, a variety he hadn't grown before, were already showing an unusual vibrancy in their nascent green leaves. The butterfly circled them once more, then settled on one of the tiny leaves, its wings slowly fanning open and closed, as if in contented repose. Elias watched, intrigued. The butterfly's agitation had vanished, replaced by a profound stillness. And as he observed it, the faint hum he had felt all morning seemed to intensify ever so slightly, mirroring the butterfly's newfound calm. He felt a connection between the creature's search and the persistent dream fragment in his own mind. Was it about finding a place of belonging, a source of peace, even in the smallest things? Was the vibrancy of the newly sprouted wildflowers part of this understanding? He returned to his pruning, but his attention was now divided. The ordinary tasks of the garden felt infused with a new layer of meaning. The buzzing of a bee, the rustle of leaves, the subtle shift of sunlight on a petal, each seemed to hold a deeper resonance, as if the world was subtly whispering a secret, waiting for him to truly listen. The day, while outwardly calm, now carried an undercurrent of gentle curiosity, a quiet quest for the meaning of his night's profound peace and the persistent dream. That afternoon, a gentle rap on his cottage door interrupted Elias's quiet contemplation. It was Clara, the young artist from the village, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, her eyes bright with an almost childlike enthusiasm. She often stopped by to discuss the way light fell on his garden, or the colors of a particular bloom. "Elias," she began, her voice bubbling with excitement, "you simply must see! The moss near the old bridge, it's glowing!" Elias's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Glowing, Clara?" "Yes, not brightly, not like a lantern, but faintly. A soft green light pulsing just a little. I've never seen anything like it." She gestured wildly with her hands, trying to convey the subtlety of the luminescence. A flicker of recognition passed through Elias. He remembered the luminous moss in the heartwood glade from his story, but he knew this wasn't that. Yet the word pulsing resonated with the rhythmic movement from his morning dream. "Did you feel anything, Clara, when you saw it?" he asked, his voice casual. Clara paused, her brow furrowed in thought. "Feel? Well, yes, a sort of gentle hum, very, very faint, and it made me feel peaceful. Like when you listen to the creek on a very still evening." Elias felt a small, inward surge of recognition. A hum, peacefulness, the creek, these were all elements of his lingering dream. "That's very interesting, Clara," he said, a genuine smile touching his lips. "Perhaps the earth is simply happy today." He didn't want to explain his stories or the deep introspections, but he cherished her innocent observation. "Perhaps," Clara agreed, though her eyes still held a speculative glint. "It made me want to paint it, but the light is so soft, it's hard to capture." They chatted for a while longer, discussing different pigments and the challenges of capturing ephemeral light. Elias subtly steered the conversation towards her own dreams, her aspirations as an artist. Clara spoke of wanting to paint not just what she saw, but what she felt, the unspoken emotions of the landscape. As she spoke, Elias noticed a faint, almost imperceptible brightening around her, a gentle aura of creative energy. It was similar to the subtle shimmer on the butterfly's wing, a manifestation of inner life. After Clara left, a new piece of the puzzle seemed to click into place for Elias. The humming he had felt in his dream, the rhythmic movement, could it be the quiet, unseen pulse of life itself? The vibrant energy of growth, of aspiration, of simple contentment, manifesting as a subtle light, a gentle hum in the world around him? Clara's observation of the moss, her own artistic dreams, the contented butterfly on the wildflowers, it all seemed connected. He decided to visit Silas at the mill. The miller, with his grounded wisdom and keen observation of the natural world, might offer another perspective, however mundane. He found Silas sweeping the mill's entrance, a contented look on his face. "Evening, Elias," Silas greeted, leaning on his broom. "You're looking well, rested." "I am," Elias affirmed. "Silas, have you noticed anything unusual about the creek lately, or the moss near the bridge?" Silas paused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Unusual, you say? Well, not exactly, but I will say, the water feels livelier. And the moss?" He chuckled. "It seems to have a new spring in its step, brighter, somehow, almost as if it's humming." He winked. "Maybe I'm just getting old and imagining things." "Perhaps," Elias replied, a knowing smile playing on his lips. Silas had felt it too, however he chose to interpret it. The subtle hum, the sense of vibrancy, it wasn't just in his own mind. The world was indeed whispering, and for those who listened, its language was becoming clearer. The peace he had found in the grove was not just within him, but seemed to be a reflection of a deeper, quiet awakening in Willow Creek itself. The next evening, Elias found himself drawn back to the willows, but this time with a new sense of anticipation. He carried his notebook, not for sketching, but for reflection, a silent conversation with himself. The moon was a fuller crescent now, casting a wider, softer glow upon the path as he walked. He arrived at his usual spot, the ancient willow. The hum in the air was distinct tonight, not just a sensation in his bones, but a faint, almost melodic vibration that seemed to emanate from the creek itself. The moss near the water's edge shimmered with a delicate emerald glow, just as Clara had described, and as Silas had subtly affirmed. It pulsed gently, a tiny living beacon in the gathering dusk. Elias sat, placing his hands flat on the glowing moss. He closed his eyes, focusing on the hum, letting it fill his senses. He imagined the vast, intricate network of roots beneath the earth, the slow, continuous flow of water, the silent, relentless process of growth and decay, life and renewal. It was the heartbeat of the land, he realized, the pulse of Willow Creek itself. The rhythmic movement from his dream was the steady flow of the creek. The silent hum was the quiet energy of life that permeated everything. As he surrendered to this awareness, a long-forgotten memory surfaced, soft and hazy at first, then sharpening with clarity. He was a small boy, no older than 5, sitting by this very creek. He remembered tracing patterns in the sand with a stick, utterly absorbed in the moment. His grandmother, a woman of quiet wisdom and a deep connection to nature, had sat beside him. "Say, Elias?" she had whispered, her voice gentle like the creek's murmur. The creek never stops, always moving, always changing, yet always the same, like life. And if you listen very carefully, you can hear it breathe and feel its song. Young Elias, with the boundless imagination of a child, had pressed his ear to the ground, trying to hear the creek breathe. He hadn't heard a sound then, not a distinct one, but he had felt something, a faint vibration, a sense of quiet power. He had forgotten that moment, buried it under the layers of adult practicality and routine. Now, after all these years, the memory bloomed, vibrant and clear. His grandmother's words, feel its song, resonated with profound new meaning. She had known. She had understood the unseen threads. He opened his eyes. The glowing moss, the murmuring creek, the whispering willows, they were not just natural elements. They were manifestations of this continuous song, this gentle, persistent hum of life. He realized the persistent dream was not a mystery to be solved, but a truth to be embraced. It was the simple, profound reality of connection, of being part of the constant, quiet flow of existence. He felt a profound sense of warmth spread through him, a feeling of deep belonging. This place, this creek, these willows, his village, they were all interconnected, breathing the same quiet breath, humming the same ancient song. He took out his notebook, but instead of writing, he simply held it open, as if offering it to the night, to the creek, to the willows, allowing their silent wisdom to imprint upon its blank pages. The calmness he felt was no longer fleeting. It was integrated, woven into the very fabric of his being. The understanding that unfurled within Elias over the next few days was not a sudden, blinding revelation, but a gentle blossoming, like a night-blooming flower slowly opening to the moon. It was the realization that the profound peace he had encountered under the willows was not merely an escape from the day's concerns, but an immersion into the deeper rhythms of life itself. The persistent dream, the rhythmic movement, the silent hum. It was the pulse of the world, the subtle energy that sustained everything, from the smallest blade of grass to the grandest ancient tree. He began to see it everywhere, in the way the morning light crept through his window, painting new patterns on the wall, in the patient unfolding of a rosebud in his garden, a slow, deliberate act of creation. In the quiet determination of the spider weaving its intricate web between the fence posts, a testament to enduring purpose. He noticed the tiny vibrations when a bird landed on his windowsill, the soft, barely audible hum of a healthy, thriving plant. The world had always been speaking, always singing its quiet song, but he had only just begun to truly listen. His conversations with Silas and Clara took on a deeper, unspoken layer. When Silas commented on the liveliness of the creek, Elias understood it not as an old man's musing, but as Silas intuitively sensing the revitalized flow of life energy. When Clara spoke of wanting to paint what she felt in the landscape, Elias saw her as instinctively reaching for those unseen currents, those humming vibrations that animated the natural world. He didn't need to explain. Their shared, though perhaps differently perceived, experiences formed a quiet bond. The incident with the agitated butterfly returning to the vibrant wildflowers also gained new clarity. The butterfly wasn't just lost. It was seeking resonance, seeking a place where the life song was strong and clear. The newly sprouted wildflowers, imbued with vigorous growth, offered that clarity, that energetic harmony. Elias realized that the moments of agitation in his own life, the feelings of disquiet, were often similar, a subtle searching for that inner resonance, a need to reconnect with the quiet flow. He realized the introspection he had always sought was not just about understanding himself, but about understanding his interconnectedness with everything. His quiet nature, his love for stillness, his habit of solitary walks, these were not just personal preferences, but avenues through which he was uniquely attuned to perceive the world's quieter truths. His previous walks had been a form of listening, but now he felt he was finally beginning to hear the symphony. The journal, once a place for fragmented thoughts, now became a chronicle of these subtle observations. He didn't write long passages, but short, evocative notes. Moss, green pulse, creek, heartbeat of flow, birdsong, pure joy vibrating. Each entry was an anchor to a new perception, a deepening of his connection to the quiet magic of existence. He learned that profound peace wasn't a destination to be reached, but a state of being to be cultivated through constant, gentle attention. It wasn't about avoiding the day's trivial worries, but about allowing them to dissolve into the larger, more enduring hum of life, much like the willow branches gracefully surrendered to the river's flow. The unfurling understanding was not a dramatic shift, but a gentle reorientation, a quiet homecoming to the natural rhythm of his own spirit within the peaceful embrace of Willow Creek. With this deeper understanding, Elias's daily life began to shift, not dramatically, but in subtle, meaningful ways. He found himself humming softly as he worked in his garden, a low melodic sound that seemed to echo the creek's murmur. He paused more often, not with a sense of being lost in thought, but with a deliberate attentiveness, absorbing the quiet details of the world around him. He noticed the intricate vein patterns on a fallen leaf, the way sunlight played through a spider's web, the precise shade of green in a new sprout. These simple observations, once fleeting, now felt rich with meaning, each a tiny note in the world's ongoing song. One crisp morning as he walked to the baker's, he noticed Mrs. Gable sitting on her porch, her shoulders slumped, a look of quiet worry etched on her face. Her usually vibrant jasmine vine seemed to droop slightly, its blooms less numerous than usual. Without consciously thinking, Elias paused. "Morning, Mrs. Gable," he said gently, his voice soft. "Your jasmine smells particularly sweet today. It reminds me of the quiet joys of a summer evening." Mrs. Gable looked up, a faint surprise in her eyes. "Oh, Elias, yes, it does, though it feels a bit tired today, like me." She sighed, a small, weary sound. "My youngest grandson, young Thomas, has been unwell, a lingering cough. I've been so worried." Elias knelt beside a small patch of chamomile growing near her steps. "Chamomile, Mrs. Gable," he murmured, gently touching a delicate white flower. "A quiet comfort. It offers gentle peace to those who are weary, and a soothing warmth to those with coughs. Perhaps a strong tea might help young Thomas sleep." He offered a small, knowing smile, not pressing, just offering a simple suggestion born from his years in the garden. He instinctively felt the subtle shift in the chamomile's own energy, a calm, healing presence. Mrs. Gable's eyes softened. "Chamomile," she repeated, a flicker of something brighter in her gaze. "I hadn't thought of that. Thank you, Elias." "That's very kind of you." She reached out and plucked a few blossoms, their delicate scent instantly releasing. As she did, Elias noticed a faint, almost imperceptible softening around her, a tiny loosening of the worry in her brow. The jasmine vine, too, seemed to perk up just a fraction. It was a ripple, he realized, a tiny wave of peace extending from one small act of mindful kindness. Later that week, he passed Silas by the mill. Silas was usually a man of few words, but today he looked thoughtful. "Elias," he began, "you know that old creek in the mill wheel? The one that's been there for years? Well, I swear, it sounds different today. Less like a complaint, more like a sigh of contentment." He paused, looking at Elias with a curious glint in his eye. "You haven't been talking to the machinery, have you?" Elias chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. "Perhaps," he replied, leaving the subtle truth unspoken. He knew it was the changing resonance of the creek, the renewed flow of life energy that he had come to feel. The creek's song, once muted, was now clearer, carrying a healthier rhythm that even the old mill seemed to absorb. These small interactions, these gentle ripples, became his new way of connecting with the world. He didn't seek grand gestures or dramatic changes. He simply allowed the quiet peace he carried within him, the understanding of the world's gentle hum, to subtly influence his actions and words. And in doing so, he found that the calmness he had first discovered under the willows was not isolated, but an enduring, expanding presence, creating a subtle harmony in the everyday life of Willow Creek. Months turned into seasons, and Elias's connection to the quiet rhythm of Willow Creek deepened with each passing day. The Willow Grove became more than just a place of respite. It was a sanctuary, a living classroom where the ancient trees continued to teach him the profound wisdom of enduring peace. The creek's murmur was a constant lullaby, its flowing waters a tangible metaphor for the ceaseless, gentle current of life and introspection. He still took his evening walks, his footsteps now imbued with a conscious awareness of the earth beneath his feet, the air on his skin, the sounds of the night unfolding around him. The river stone, once a simple comfort, now felt like a conduit, a small, smooth piece of the world's enduring patience in his hand. His notebook contained fewer sketches and more observations of the subtle shifts in nature, a quiet dialogue between his spirit and the world's unspoken language. Elias noticed the subtle changes in the village too, a reflection of the gentle ripples he had unknowingly initiated. Mrs. Gable's jasmine vine truly flourished, its scent sweeter, its blooms more abundant, mirroring the renewed lightness in her step. Young Thomas's cough had faded, and the boy now played with a vigor that brought a smile to Elias's face. Silas, the miller, often hummed as he worked, the sound echoing a contentment that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the old mill. Clara, the artist, painted with a newfound depth, her canvases capturing not just the visual beauty of Willow Creek, but the very essence of its quiet, vibrant energy. He understood now that his journey of introspection wasn't a singular event, but a continuous cycle, much like the seasons themselves. There would be days of clearer insight, like the crisp air after a storm, and days of gentle haze, like the morning mist. But the underlying current of peace, once found, remained. It was a wellspring within him, fed by his connection to the natural world and his practice of quiet attention. He often sat by the creek, watching the moon reflect on its surface, the willows whispering above him. He had learned that true peace wasn't the absence of trouble, but the presence of a calm heart amidst life's inevitable ebbs and flows. It was the ability to listen to the whispers, to feel the hum, to perceive the beauty in the small, enduring details. Elias, the man who lived by Willow Creek, was no longer just Elias from Oakhaven. He was a living embodiment of the creek's quiet reflection. His life, once characterized by its simple routine, was now deeply enriched by a profound awareness, a constant, gentle dialogue with the world around him. As he drifted into sleep each night, whether under the willows or within his cozy cottage, he carried the enduring song of Willow Creek within him, knowing that the journey of quiet reflection was a path without end, always leading to a deeper, more integrated peace. The world slept, and Elias slept, both breathing the same tranquil breath, harmonizing in the enduring melody of existence.